What is Putin's objective in all of this?
The ultimate objective is to destroy democracies from the inside out. What he wants to do is erode trust and sow divisions in the U.S. electorate. That way, when we are fighting amongst ourselves, it actually discredits those people that are elected and those institutions they represent.
So when he sees the fighting that's going on right now, for example, in the House Intelligence Committee, he sits back and says,
this is exactly what I wanted to happen. If I'm Putin, he's seeing dissension between Republicans, Democrats, now between the Congress and the executive branch. This is a dream come true for him in terms of fomenting chaos, such that we can't really focus on his active measures and we can't focus on his foreign policy.
Is there a sense, and you've done a lot of research into this, you're an expert, that the then candidate, Donald Trump, or any of his campaign associates were aware of or involved with any of these Russians in these cyber attacks?
What we can't tell is whether President Trump realized he was actually citing Russian propaganda at times, which did happen. But what did happen was his campaign manager cited Russian propaganda 7 days after it had been debunked in August of 2016. We see lots of lines that are pushed by the Kremlin that are fed into information briefings. And so the other part is the coordination. We see hacks, we see leaks, and those are very synchronized or come out very quickly with the campaign back in August, September, October. And so that tends to lean to the belief that, yeah, there was coordination.
So you think that, that Trump associates, even the candidate himself, were citing what we would call fake news spread out by these fake Russian news organizations?
It goes both ways. Sometimes they would cite fake news that was put out by Russian state propaganda. Whether they did that wittingly or unwittingly, you can't tell. But other times they would put out falsehoods, and those falsehoods would then be used as talking points by the Russians. So the circle plays back on itself in a reverse direction.
Is the Trump administration now, and the president's been in office for more than 60 days, is it handling this investigation appropriately from your vantage point?
No. A great concern to me is this report that you just had at the top of the hour, which is that 2 people in the White House might have cherry-picked intelligence that could have been part of active investigations and gave it to somebody outside of the normal process.
You're talking about the New York Times report.
Yes, the New York Times report.
2 senior White House officials, according to the New York Times, supposedly, according to the New York Times, invited the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, to come over and take a look at this intelligence.
Yes, and that would be circumventing normal investigative processes. When that breaks down, when we see that cherry picking, it even further confuses fact and fiction. And what we need from our chief executive is fact over fiction. And we need to have confidence in what the process is and that we're getting all the information.
So what are the consequences of all of this?
What you're going to end up having is huge political partisanship on both sides. The other part is you're going to have an executive branch and a legislative branch potentially that don't work together. So you can't pass budgets. You can't come around a foreign policy in particular to counter Russia.
I watched your testimony today before the Senate Intelligence Committee, and it was fascinating. One thing you said, one way, in your words, to trace Russian influence in the presidential election here in the United States is to, in your words, follow the trail of dead Russians.
Yes.
What did you mean?
Since the election, there's been a series, probably 7 to 8 Russians, either that are official people of the government or were investigated, that have turned up dead. You've had ambassadors turn up dead under suspicious circumstances. You've had people at different cybersecurity companies arrested unexpectedly. If you follow that trail, that's where most of those leaks are that are allegedly coming from the XMI6 dossier. That's what I believe those to be.
You think the FBI is fully equipped to do a great investigation into all of this? Because you heard James Comey, the FBI director, say a week ago, they are engaged right now in a very serious criminal investigation.
I think the FBI has the capability to do it, but all of this political bargaining, this cherry picking of intelligence from inside the government, using it for political purposes with these congressional committees, that just derails investigations. How on earth could the FBI do a good investigation when intelligence is possibly being leaked from the inside of the government in a different location? It's very hard to run down leads or come to any decisive conclusions.
There were a few chilling moments during the testimony today before the Senate Intelligence Committee where you even expressed concern about your own security. Tell us about that.
Right. I know that I've been targeted either by trolling attacks. I've been notified by the FBI through the think tank, Foreign Policy Research Institute, that they were notified I've been a target of malware attacks. And I know I'm on that list. If I speak today, my bank accounts could very well be compromised. I could be discredited through compromising materials, some true, some false. But I think the biggest concern is that I'm not confident right now that the U.S. government would actually come to bat for me.
You're not confident?
No, I've seen President Trump call for Russia to leak emails against a political opponent. I've seen him discredit the U.S. Intelligence Committee to cite conspiracies that he's seen on his Twitter feed. So if I say things that the Trump administration doesn't like or that are counter to Putin, I'm not sure that it's not, Trump first, Russia second, and the rest of America third.
Because I got to take a quick break, but what you seem to be suggesting is there still some coordination in your analysis between the Russians and Trump associates?
No, I think it's that in terms of the political bartering that's going on right now, it's opportunism. And so whenever there is a theme or a message that someone wants to push, whether it comes from Russia, some sort of other fake news outlet, or it comes from a political party, they will push falsehoods to achieve political objectives before they'll push the truth for the American people. Stand
by, Clint, because there's more questions I have. Your testimony today was fascinating before the Senate Intelligence Committee. We'll take a quick break. Much more right after this. A lot of folks don't necessarily understand when Mark Warner, the vice chairman of the Intelligence Committee, says there's 1,000 Russians out there. They're working day and night spreading false information, calls them trolls. Explain the impact of that.
It's a mirror image of what they've done inside Russia for many years, which is they take any sort of dissidence or any sort of opposing view and they shout it down. That could be on the comments page of a newspaper article online, or that could be even calling into radio shows or television shows. But in the cyberspace and social media, what you see is a series of actors portraying people that are in the target audience they want to reach. Back in 2016, that was the United States. And now it might be Germany. And they're befriending them, attacking those that are opponents of Russian views, and pushing in information that is supportive of their line, which would be white outlets, which we call Russian state-sponsored outlets, or fake news, manipulated truth.
How pervasive is this?
It goes on in waves based on when there's a campaign. So any build up to an election, you're going to see them move in with what's called active measures, which is to erode these electorates from the inside out. But you'll also see it pop up ad hoc when they see an opportunity to get in the middle of social unrest, like Black Lives Matter protests, or they see an opportunity with a financial company, an American company that's had a tragedy. They'll amplify that too to try and undermine it.
So what you testified today is that a lot of Americans are being fooled by the information they're receiving. It's coming from these Russian trolls, but they don't know that.
Yes, a lot of it comes from Russian trolls. There's several kinds of fake news. So you've heard it kind of broadly thrown out there. State-sponsored is disinformation, which we're really worried about regarding the election. But there's also profiteers that we've heard about who just churn out fake news. What's different about the state-sponsored is directly targeted into audiences that they want to sway in an election. So if you're gaming the system, 50 states, 6 of them end up being swing states, you target that disinformation at those voters.
And so you're talking about the fake news coming from these Russian trolls. When the President of the United States speaks about fake news, he's talking about mainstream major news organizations here in the United States, and that causes a lot of confusion.
Right. Fake news has also become synonymous with news I don't want to hear or news I don't like. And so you can use that as an attack point. I think the more important part is over the horizon, mainstream media needs to be more accurate in its reporting, writ large. But also we need to come up with some systems to help inform consumers about what they're reading.
So you're not very optimistic that any of this can be stopped anytime soon. Tell us why.
I think the fake news issue can be dealt with, and social media companies are taking great steps for it. But we cannot counter active measures by the Russians until we have a president that's not actually citing active measures at time to go after his political opponents. The second part is active measures right now from Russia are anti-NATO and anti-EU, the European Union. That seems to also be a policy stance we might be taking inside the United States. You can't counter that message if we're also parroting that message here at home.
So the bottom line is we should anticipate this going on. They may have gone after Hillary Clinton and the Democrats in the 2016 presidential election, but they could flip and go after Trump and his friends pretty soon.
Exactly. As soon as the Trump administration or Republicans or Democrats are opposing Putin's agenda and Russian aggression, you're going to see this whole system turned on them. And it will go either way. In the hacks that you saw, we've heard about the DNC. They hacked thousands of accounts. And right now inside Russia, they probably sit on thousands of people's personal information. And when it's opportunistic for them, they can do data dumps just like they do.
Would it make sense for the U.S. or elements in the U.S. to do to the Russians what they're doing to the U.S. right now? Would that be a deterrent?
I don't think that's the way to go, because we ultimately want to stay true to our democratic values. We want to put out truth. I think the better way to go is to expose these things that they're doing, expose active measures for what they actually are, which are people that are pushing fake information. If we start producing propaganda that's false, we only undermine ourselves in doing that.
Clinton Watts, thanks so much for your testimony today. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Will.